Hello and welcome to SharpHR Career Corner with Karen Sharp Price. This podcast will inform and inspire you in your quest to find the right career path. If you're just starting out, looking to make a change in your field, or transitioning into a new career, then this podcast is for you. We will be sharing tips and providing resources on topics such as writing resumes, interviewing, using LinkedIn, and networking. We will take a look at different careers, companies, and opportunities. You will hear success stories from professionals in all career paths, and so much more. You will leave this podcast with 3 key takeaways that you can easily put into practice. Enjoy!
Welcome to SharpHR Career Corner. I'm Karen Sharp Price. Today we're going to talk to Eric Hill about his career story. Eric and I met through Damon College. Hi Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Karen. Thank you.
Good.
How are you?
Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us and talking about your career journey. I'd like us to try to begin with what drew you to social studies and history in college.
It actually, I would say, started in high school. I of all the courses that you have to take in high school, the ones that really spoke to me the most really were my social studies courses. They weren't only the ones that I tended to do the best in, but they were the ones I found the most interesting, the ones that I found I had a passion outside of school about. I would be watching the History Channel at home, or sometimes the Discovery Channel if it had a sociology or an anthropology aspect to it.
Huh.
Not all the time, don't get me wrong. Of course,
Yeah.
I watched other things, but it wasn't uncommon to just kind of sit there and go, let's look at this modern Marvel show or something like that was on the History Channel. So in high school, I was a shop kid mostly.
Okay.
I did a lot of architecture classes and working with CAD and things. And by the time I got to my senior year, I sort of realized, man, I don't know that I want to sit down and draw all day at that time. And I had no idea where CAD was going, which is computer animated drafting.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, what's my next love? And history sort of spoke to me. And I was also very lucky to have some very passionate and influential teachers that kind of filled certain role model and looking up to type roles that perhaps didn't exist in my personal life. Mm-hmm. And so it seemed like a no-brainer. I should go to school to teach, and I should teach social studies.
So where did you end up? Where did you go?
I did my undergraduate at Kutztown University of Pennsylvania, okay, which is, if anybody's familiar, it's southeastern Pennsylvania, not far from sort of the triangle of Philadelphia, Reading, and Allentown. Kutztown locally in the Buffalo area is probably best known for being the alma mater of Andre Reed.
Ah, okay.
So that was how I first heard of it.
Uh-huh.
And my father lived down there. And so I had gone on a college visit, just thought, oh, what the heck, I'll take a look. Most likely I'll be going locally to Buff State or UB, somewhere like that.
Uh-huh.
And as I looked at the program and realized that it actually was originally, in its inception, was Kutztown State Teachers College, and sort of heard the history, and that's what they really hung their hat on, I applied and I got in, and I said, that's where I'm going. I'm leaving Western New York, and I'm going to head to Pennsylvania.
So after you graduated from there, were you still on the same track of planning on teaching?
Yes. So right from the get-go, I had to do my undergraduate, general studies, things of that nature. But even as a freshman, I was part of a cohort, so I was enrolled in some education classes first semester of my freshman year.
Oh.
And that was my track the whole way. My student teaching senior year was, a great experience, and then had some job fair opportunities. I actually came back to Buffalo the summer that I graduated, which was May of 2003. And my older sister is also a teacher. She teaches special ed. And she had a job at Hopevale Union Free School District, which if you're familiar, it was in the Hamburg area, and it was a school for some very troubled students that were court ordered to be there.
Wow.
So my job getting paid for a teaching experience was actually teaching biology and algebra as a long-term summer substitute, not in my degree at all,
Yeah.
at Hopevale, while I was interviewing and eventually got offered a position as a full-time history teacher at Spotsylvania High School, Virginia.
Wow.
So by August of 2003, shortly after graduation, I moved to Virginia and started my first full-time teaching job.
So when you were looking for a teaching job, you were looking really anywhere? You would have moved anywhere?
Yeah, I was very open to that. One of the things that Kutztown was very good about letting us know that to be a teacher in, I believe it's something like 44 or maybe 45 of the 50 states, you have to take a series of exams called the praxis exams. And that gives you reciprocity depending on your scores, but that gives you reciprocity in almost every single state in the United States. Not New York State, but New York has its own exams, but 45 of the 50 do accept it. And so Pennsylvania being one of them, it was actually a requirement to graduate as an ed major that you had to pass the praxis exams at that time at Kutztown. Huh. So it wasn't just the course load, it was also taking and passing those. And they were also very good about kind of giving us some exposure to the job market and sort of looking at the various regions of the United States and where teachers were needed and where we had some, where we could get paid pretty well, even right out of school, but at the same time where it was needed. New York State's been losing population for a couple of decades.
Yeah.
As people move away, of course, they take their children.
Yeah.
There's not as much of a need for teachers in all disciplines, math and science. Right. Sure. Unfortunately, social studies teachers were kind of a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to teach, I had to be open to moving to going somewhere else and at least building up my resume and then perhaps later on down the line coming back.
Okay. So we're gonna jump ahead a little bit, but sure. And we'll go back to your teaching in high school. But at what point did you then decide to go from teaching history or social studies to instructional systems design? Where did that come into play?
So I guess fast forward to 2016, I believe it was. Around 2016, I had been the social studies department chair at the school I was working at in Charlotte, North Carolina, for 8 years. I had actually even also been an assistant principal at one point in time and went back to the classroom because, and this is no offense to people that are administrators, but it takes a special kind of person. And I realized after 1 year of doing it, that person is not me. I belong in the classroom. I belong educating. That's where I'm happy. That's where I can do my best work. So anyways, at the same time, I also wanted to give myself some, I'll call it career flexibility. There always has been a desire had been a desire to move back to Western New York. And I had been gone. I left in 1999 for college and I was gone that entire time. My parents, like a lot of expats coming back to Western New York, parents are getting a little older, wanted to come home, wanted to be around family. And so knowing that unfortunately social studies teachers are a dime a dozen, and the teacher job market here, between the exams I would have to go through, not that that was an issue, but there are a lot of hurdles if you're not already in the system.
Oh, okay. Yep.
A lot of hurdles. So I wanted to be able to be flexible, still use the skills that I'd, gained and refined in my own career. But I also needed some practical experience. So I started looking at what can teachers do outside of teaching. I looked in, whether it was just blogs. I went to the Occupational Outlook Handbook, which I'm sure you're familiar with, to sort of match things up. What's it look like on the horizon for some of these careers? And instructional systems design was one of those careers that I thought, all right. So I went back to school for a second master's degree at UNC Charlotte for specifically instructional systems design. And had a very good relationship with my principal at that time. So I started teaching part-time, and I became the instructional coordinator for the school. And so in 2016, I think it was halfway through the year, we actually initiated a blended learning program that was school-wide at the school I was working at. So as I was working on my master's, I also that was part of my job, was to initiate this. So we actually had every teacher using an LMS. In this case, it was Schoology, not Blackboard, but using a learning management system in some shape or form in their class. And it was a 2-year phase-in program. So by the time I left, we had 100% of the staff had met all our milestones. They were actively using it with their courses, many of them in a flipped classroom type strategy, which a lot of that came from partly my experience, and then partly my studies when I went back for instructional design.
Yeah, it was like right when you were doing it. So can you explain, because honestly, until I was teaching at Damon and working then with you to help me figure out my classes, I really did not know that even existed out there. So can you explain to those
Sure.
that are listening, what exactly is instructional systems design and technology?
Sure. I'll give you the textbook definition first, and then I'll sort of my simplified version.
Okay.
I typed it up because I didn't want to
Okay,
forget
good.
the textbook definition. The textbook definition is the systematic process for the assessment and development of training solutions designed specifically for the purpose of formal training delivery. The way I look at it is this: it's a systematic and purposeful way of designing and developing any learning program, whether it be for corporate or school or whatever in between, in which every aspect of the curriculum that you're putting together is selected and we'll say students are engaging with it very intentionally. It's all interconnected. So there's a lot of project management that goes into it, sort of keeping that idea in mind, using a model I'm very familiar with and very partial to, is called backwards design. And the technology piece really comes in when we think about online courses, hybrid courses or blended courses. But it really doesn't need to be. The truth is, even instructional systems design, if you just drop the technology part, a lot of corporate trainers went through similar training where they might even train only in face-to-face prior to COVID. But everything has a purpose. Everything has a meaning. Every asset used, even no matter how minuscule or small, comes into play. Even one of the parts you're thinking about, ergonomics, when you're filling up a room with people, will they have enough room to write? Will lefties be able to use these seats versus people that are right-handed? So there's a lot of just systematic thinking, organization that goes into it. Now bring the technology piece, and we think in an online program, for example. All right, now how do those pieces enhance the program or support whichever program you're building?
Okay. So, I mean, you're really looking at it from really, truly both sides.
Yes, I like to think that that's where I am lucky. Is I've been on the teacher side, I've been on the instructor side. As an instructional coordinator at a school, I trained teachers. I've obviously working at Damon, I'm working with faculty both collaboratively as well as the workshops that we put on, for example, helping with that training. So I do like to. This is maybe where my history teacher background comes into play. I always taught my history classes from a perspective where I asked my students to look at every perspective of a situation. So if we're talking politics, don't only look at it from the Republican side. Don't only look at it from the Democrat side. If you think you're a Democrat, okay, fine. Try to think of it from the Republican side, because it helps you with your argument if you know what your opposition is thinking like.
Yep.
And then when it comes to training, I always try to put myself in the shoes of faculty. What kind of obstacles might they be facing? Unfamiliarity with technology, for example. Okay, so I really need to make sure I'm hitting the finer points. But when I'm also working to design courses, I'm an advocate for the student in that sense. I try to think, if I'm a student, am I going to be able to easily find these things? As a student, I want to concentrate on the content. I don't want to have to perform a scavenger hunt just to find the assignment I'm supposed to turn in.
So is that where that one click comes into play?
That's part of it. That is part of it. Yep. We do try to keep the number of clicks as small as possible.
Well, from where I stand as an adjunct and having to deal going through the pandemic, pretty much all my stuff was already online. So when I would go into Damon and teach it, it was the same process that I was using when I had to go, all full remote. But I have to say, with nephews that are in other schools, in the area, college-wise, Damon really stood out. Like the way in which your whole department helped all of the professors, from my perspective, was incredible. And we had to move very quickly. And when that happened, that was like a fire drill, and we had to go with it. And you made it very easy because of all the things that you had already set up along the way that probably we didn't really appreciate until we really needed it. But you made it very easy, and you make all these videos that we can watch and go over and over, and if we're stuck on something, the availability of your department for anybody to be having to meet with somebody at any given time because we're having trouble. I can't speak more highly of the way Damon has handled the whole pandemic, from technology to everything else. So I thank you for that, because you really you've really helped. I mean, you don't know until you're in it what to expect, but you already had things in place, which made things a lot smoother when it happened.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. I don't know if we're a unique office as far as instructional design at colleges and universities is concerned, but we might be. All three of us have a background as teachers at some point in our careers, and as educators, in some point in our careers. And so I do think that helps us have an empathy for faculty that perhaps other instructional designers or design departments, I don't want to say they lack, but maybe they can't quite empathize as much.
Right. I think that had to have helped. Even in your career, having already been on the other side, I would think that has to have some kind of positive impact on what you do.
I like to think so. And even coming back to just maybe pre-COVID or since COVID course design, knowing some of with the program I helped institute in Charlotte, knowing some of the hiccups we dealt with before a pandemic, where we were trying to get our faculty using something like Blackboard on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Peter and I had a lot of conversations, and I think we were able to start instituting some things even on the front end that, as you said, we didn't necessarily wait until the pandemic, but at least when it hit, we had some resources ready to go and to share out.
Yeah, I mean, really, from where I'm standing, you didn't seem like you hiccuped at all. It seemed very smooth. You had things in place. You just, kind of threw it out there and said, we do have these things here. So you can, like they were already there. It didn't feel like you guys were scrambling at all. You seemed very put together, and processes and procedures, and you were always available to help any of us at any time. So from my perspective, you guys did an amazing job. So
thank you. We appreciate that.
Just want to get that out there. So tell me, what do you love most right now about Damon and about your job?
I would say something I wasn't used to as a teacher, and this may surprise some people. First would be the autonomy that I have and the trust that I have. As a high school teacher, a lot of things are dictated to you by a lot of different ways. Some are dictated by the state, and it's just, this is what you have to do. You don't have any say at all in the final exam. You don't even get to see it ahead of time. It's just going to happen. Here it is. So a lot of things are dictated to you. There are certain things that your schedule is dictated to you. I taught 5 of 6 periods a day. And I was told about 2 weeks before class start, this is when your course starts. You don't get to choose when you teach. And depending on your department, luckily, I like to think when I ran a department, we had our end of the year department meeting. We chose what we would teach the next school year. We really sort of hashed that out as a department.
Mm-hmm.
And as a leader, I always took on all right, if nobody else wants it, I'll teach it. This is my preference. I hope you guys are okay with that. But I usually deferred to everyone else to select first, and sort of took on the courses that some people either didn't want to teach or didn't feel comfortable teaching. I thought that was the way to do it, to lead by example. So many things are dictated to you. At Damon, I have the autonomy within the larger IT department, but specifically the Office of Instructional Design, to come up with ideas on what trainings we want to present to the Damon faculty. And a lot of it's based on data that we do collect, whether it be in conversations or knowing where needs are, like the pandemic created.
Yeah.
So I have that autonomy. I get to control my schedule. If I don't clock in until 10 o'clock, that's fine, but get the hours in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an occasional. That's not an everyday thing. That's if it happens, you have to go get an oil change. Sure, go get your oil changed, that day, but then take care of it. And I do really love that. And then what I've really found is I've become a super nerd for organization, for like course organization, getting these things together, the project management aspect of my job with course development. I've just become maybe some would say OCD, but I'm like, but I like it. Like I don't feel driven crazy by it. And I do find that in the systems we've created and the processes that we have, there's a flexibility. So it's flexible, systematic course development. It's when you hear systematic, you think has to be done that way. No, there's actually flexibility built into the system to be able to manipulate things. And so I really enjoy that. I enjoy collaborating with faculty, and sometimes they open my eyes and go, oh, I didn't think to do that way. Let's see if we can mesh what you have with what I have and kind of make the perfect thing. And that's happened a couple times in the course development process. And
so it's never
awesome.
Boring.
No, it's rarely boring, especially over the last year. It's been rarely boring.
So let's go back just a little bit, back when you were in high school. Like, what did you love the most about teaching at the high school level?
It would really be, two things. First and foremost, the interactions with the students. I really, really enjoyed being the other part of the nerd that I am, the history and the social studies nerd that I am. Being able to connect with the students and have them, in class and get their, really, to be honest, get their take. Like, at your age, what do you think about these sometimes very controversial topics?
Mm-hmm.
And have that great back and forth, but also have an opportunity for them to bounce it off each other. And you can almost literally see the growth. You can see the evolution of their thought process. It's really rare. Sometimes you even see it in a class period, but it's usually over the course of a school year.
Yeah.
So, those teachable moments is what we always refer to them, that would pop up and you say, I don't have to ignore what just happened. I can pause my content. Let's use this comment, this statement, this whatever just happened as a teachable moment. And it's not necessarily a father to son, mother to daughter type of lesson.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a lesson just on society that pops up and why, you may disagree with this, but here's probably why it's going on. And the light bulb moments, the aha, you can just see when, oh, I got it, hits their face. I do miss those, and that's what I really loved about teaching.
Well, I would think that you would see a lot of that with conversations about social studies, because you're comparing now to then, or what would you think if this was happening when if you were that age, and things like that. And so they would have a lot of opinions about that, or I can't even imagine nowadays being a social studies teacher and talking about the whole political arena. There's got to be a lot of conversation going on in those classes right now.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
I would definitely imagine so.
Yes.
Yes, there are some dry aspects. No offense to economists, but teaching the law of diminishing returns is not the most riveting concept for 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of times you do get to have those great conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. So we're going to take a little bit of a break from
Okay.
these kinds of questions, and I'm going to ask you. It's a new segment that we have, and that is get to the point. And these are going to. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and you're just going to quickly give me an answer. So usually they're one or the other. Some you have to come up with one, but it's nothing that you had to study for. So.
All right, good.
You can't fail on this one, so it's okay. So here we go. Virtual or in person?
In person.
Okay. Pizza or wings?
Wings.
Social media of choice?
Facebook.
Dog or cat?
Dog.
Relaxation of choice?
Sleeping.
Books or music?
Music.
Okay. Now this one is going to take you back to your high school days. Most significant war, World War II or the American Civil War, in your opinion?
Only between those two.
Yeah, or you could, if you want to throw one of your own in, that's fine. What do you think is the most significant war?
For, American Revolution.
Oh, okay. All right. See, I thought I was going to get you on that one. Choice of beverage.
Coffee.
Okay. Now, could be a tricky one. Ultimate frisbee or disc golf?
Ultimate frisbee.
Okay. You're the old-fashioned guy. Phone call or email?
Email.
See, that was easy, wasn't
Yes. Yes. I feel like if there are any instructional designers that are listening, though, they'll be like, "Why did he say face to face in a COVID world?"
it? That's all right. It's because it's just what comes to mind. That's all. Just trying to get you to let people get to know you a little bit faster than my regular questions that I ask.
Right.
But they're still very interesting. But so let's see. So when looking at your background, it seemed like you were super active in high school when you were teaching in high school. And one of those questions that I asked you about Ultimate Frisbee, I saw that you were the advisor for the Ultimate Frisbee Club in high school. So are you a Frisbee player?
I was, yes.
Okay.
I haven't played in a few years, but yeah, when I lived overseas is really where I got into it, and I was teaching overseas.
Oh, now you missed that whole part. When did that happen?
Oh, well, so I'll rewind with a quick timeline because we did jump from 2003 all the way to 2016.
Yeah.
When I was living in Virginia, and I was in Virginia from 03 to 06,
Okay.
I was coaching wrestling. I was coaching football. I was an assistant coach for those programs, and I really wanted to go back to school and get my master's degree in education. And so I started looking into programs, and there was a cohort with George Mason University. The problem was, at that time, we were entering that big housing boom.
Oh.
As far as, before the bubble burst.
Yep.
And in Northern Virginia, prices were skyrocketing and things like that. And I also had three major goals: master's degree, get a house, and do more traveling. Well, as the master's degree, as I looked into programs, I really needed my coaching stipends to be able to afford the programs. Problem was the programs met the exact same time I needed to be coaching. So I couldn't make it work. So I started, okay, let's go to goal number 2, house. Well, homes that I could have afforded maybe when I first moved there in 03, all of a sudden had almost tripled in price. Okay,
Wow.
Can't afford that on a teacher's salary in Virginia. Okay, option 3, what about traveling? I think I was 25 at the time, not married, no children, and I started applying I applied to school systems in South Korea, in the Philippines, in various parts of the world.
Wow.
And then I got offered. Well, I interviewed and got offered a position teaching on Saipan, which is part of the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands.
Oh my gosh.
It's actually a U.S. territory. I always say overseas because no one knows. But in order to get there, you have to connect somewhere like Japan to get there, or maybe Hawaii, but that's the expensive ticket. So when I went over there, we were only. It was a short flight to go somewhere like Guam or Indonesia or Bali or Thailand or Japan. I actually went to Japan once on vacation, spent some time
That's
in Tokyo.
cool.
So while there's a long answer to get back to Ultimate Frisbee. I had played a little bit in high school, and while I was overseas teaching, I sort of stumbled into this Ultimate Frisbee club of all adults playing Ultimate Frisbee. And we would play at the local high schools, and sometimes we would go play on the beach. Gorgeous
Wow.
sunsets on the beaches of Saipan,
Yeah.
tropical island.
Oh my
And
gosh.
over time, it had gotten, in a good way, competitive. And not me, but one of the guys sort of running the club said, "Hey, do you want to go play in an international tournament?" And so he found a tournament in Bali, Indonesia. And we all booked our own individual flights, and we flew to Bali over. Almost everybody was a teacher too, which was funny because almost everybody had the exact same break. And we played against teams from Hong Kong and Australia, Bali, of course,
Wow.
Thailand, over I think it was about a 3-day tournament.
Oh, that is
round
really
robin style
cool.
tournament.
Wow.
So when I came back to the mainland United States in 2008, just as fun and sort of to get some students who we were always hanging around after school waiting for rides. They didn't have any interest and in some cases no money to join our sports teams
Mm-hmm.
and pay for jerseys and things like that. Another teacher and I said, let's see if we can round up these kids and do something active with them. And so we had the Frisbee out there one day, just sort of throwing around. And then I said, well, guys want to play? You want to play? And they called it Frisbee football. It's same thing as Ultimate Frisbee.
Uh-huh.
You guys want to play a game? So we set up some cones, and it turned into a weekly thing. And the next semester, we started saying, well, maybe we can actually put together some teams here just within the high school. And it grew. It grew from I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 kids after school for the first year or so, to all of a sudden we had 30 or 40 kids out there every week. They weren't, I kind of felt bad for like the track team. They weren't joining the track team because they wanted to play Ultimate Frisbee. And we had our own inner squad scrimmages. And at some point, I sort of stepped back a little bit and because I was pursuing another master's degree. And it's funny, the gentleman who was my assistant coach when I coached wrestling as the head coach, we flip-flopped. When I stepped down to go back to school, he became the head. And I was like, well, I'll be your assistant for a year. So we flipped roles. Same thing happened with Ultimate Frisbee. I was sort of running and coordinating everything. He said, I'm going to back away. He said, well, I'll be the head. All right, I'll come out from time to time then. And we always sort of flip-flop roles. But that's how it really got into it. We really wanted to do something for the students that at first had nothing to do.
I love that story. So I didn't know. So were you gone and did you get your degree there? Were you there about a couple of years or how long were you there?
I was there. It was a 2-year contract.
Okay.
So I didn't come home for 2 years. And it
Oh.
killed my mother.
Oh.
It's literally on the other side of the world. It's the South Pacific. It's 14 hours, I believe, ahead. And while I was there, luck had it, I stumbled into my Master of Ed degree, Master of International Ed.
Wow.
There was a program with the local school system. They had contracted with Framingham State University in Massachusetts. And faculty there, I don't know what Framingham had them do to prepare for this, but they sent their faculty to us in Saipan.
Oh.
And we took courses over a 2-week time frame. We would take 2 courses at a time over 2 weeks, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, intense. take the courses, and then they'd be gone, and then we'd have about 2 months before that, and it was always scheduled over our breaks, our
Wow.
winter break, our spring break, things like that.
Wow.
And
So,
so
looking back, are you glad that you took that opportunity? Because I mean, a lot of people may not have. Would think, oh, it's too far, it's too long,
yeah,
and come up with all these reasons. But now that you have done that, would you recommend that for somebody else?
I guess here's what I would recommend. Here's how I came to that decision for myself. A long time ago, my grandfather had said to me, Eric, as long as you can look back on things and not have regret, then you've had a good
Mm.
life. And so when I was 25 and I was going down my own personal checklist, I thought to myself, and I'd been offered the job, I could have stayed where I was and been very comfortable and kind of continued along. And the only thing I thought to myself was, Eric, 5 or 10 years from now, are you going to look back and say, I wish I would have done that? Are you going to regret that you didn't go and take that chance and take that shot?
Yeah.
And the answer was yes. So I said, I got to go. And
Wow.
that would probably be the advice I would give to someone is I can't say go do it, but
Yeah.
what I would say is ask yourself that question.
Yeah. Would you regret it?
And if the answer is yes, then I think you know what your answer,
Well, it
what
sounds
you
like
need
it
to
was
do.
a beautiful place to go. So,
Yes. And as a history teacher, it's World War II history. A lot of it on that island.
huh.
Uh, the island right next door, 6 miles away across the channel, is where the Enola Gay took off from in World War II to drop the A bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Wow.
So a huge player in the Pacific theater, Saipan actually was. It was very
And you
strategically
said that you
important.
did like go to Japan. Was it from there you went to Japan? So were there a lot of
Mhm.
you could take little trips when you wanted to do different things?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. We could take trips. I was lucky enough to go to Japan for about a total of a week
Uh-huh.
over time. I spent 2 weeks in Bali and about a week in Singapore
Oh, wow.
in the time that I was over there.
Yeah.
All very unique and very amazing places to visit on their own. Singapore
Wow.
might be one of my favorite cities that I've ever visited.
Really?
Yes, they are they probably still are way ahead of the curve when it comes to just internet infrastructure.
Oh.
As a city state, I think that helps. But when I was there in 2007. There was citywide Wi-Fi,
Hmm.
and all citizens just had access to Wi-Fi everywhere in the city. You plugged in essentially their version of a social security number, and you were tapped into it. And even visitors, you could get a temporary access code. You pay what I don't recall what it was. Let's just say $10 per day.
Yeah.
I really don't recall what it was, but you could get a temporary access code for as long as you were there and be tapped into the Wi-Fi while you were in the city.
Wow.
And a lot of other very neat things beyond that, but
Yeah.
that's the one that really stands out.
Yeah.
That I always think, wow, America, who's going to be the first to adopt that?
Well, wait a few more decades.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So I asked my guests to give 3 pieces of advice for anyone thinking about a career in your field. What would be 3 things that you wish you knew before taking the path you took? Was there anything that you would stand out?
First I would say I wish I knew sooner about instructional design, sort of like you. It was never really on my radar.
Yeah.
I had wondered how did people in high schools become instructional coordinators and all these positions that existed. And some of the people I knew, they sort of explained, they just fell into it. They didn't necessarily have a degree. They probably went for administrative, and sort of this was I didn't get the assistant principal job, so this was the fallback. And that's how a lot of them fell into it.
Okay.
So I wish I knew about this sooner as a career path. The next I would say would be specifically about the job. I never really had an opportunity to learn about the technical aspects of an LMS, something like Blackboard, the very behind the scenes things, the administrative parts. We had to do everything. When I helped with that blended learning initiative, we had to do everything free. There was no budget for this, so I had to get very creative.
Wow, yeah.
And Schoology at the time offered that anyone could set up courses for free. You didn't need a school subscription or a teacher subscription or anything like that. You could have as many students as possible, and so found out about that and said, we need to use that. And we were already using Gmail as a school, so we're really going to leverage every G Suite thing that comes with Google for education that we're paying for. So we had to get very creative. I have to give a special props to our tech guru, Anthony Gardzellick at Queens Grand High School. He went on every website he could find. He made 4-hour trips down to Atlanta. He drove to I think, what is it? Why can't I think of what it's called? There's a fort in Fayetteville, North Carolina, government, Army fort. I'm drawing a blank on it right now. But he drove 2-3 hours away to get anything anybody was willing to give away, cheap or free.
Wow.
And he put together a lot of devices literally by hand. He'd take parts out of this computer and put them together in that other one. And so I would help him. I had no idea what I was doing. Oh, take this part. Sure, I can do that. And we pieced it together. So I wish I had known about the LMS stuff. And then the final part, I wish I knew in the industry outside of education, a lot of corporate training, they're looking for what they always sort of refer to as a unicorn, someone who can do it all. And there are pieces I still don't know. I don't know how to code. I don't know really anything about API calls. I have a very basic rudimentary knowledge of their existence. They're not requirements at Damon College for our department since IT is so involved and we're integrated with IT. But in a lot of other industries that use instructional designers, that's part of the job, is knowing those skills. And so I would say, for people that are interested, that sort of read up on that now.
Okay. All right.
Take a look at that now.
That's really the only way they can, though, right? I mean, if someone was interested and wanted to dig in a little deeper, they just have to do their own personal research. Like when you're going in for a master's in instructional design, there are probably multiple programs out there that schools, universities are using. So is it common in the way you use them? So if you know how to use one, you can kind of figure out the others, or do you have to relearn each one, do you think?
I think if you've learned one, it will help you learn the others, but there's always going to be a relearning. Even if you've used Blackboard, we know, we see this at Damon with faculty. We're going to make the permanent switch to Blackboard Ultra, soon. Not now, but
I know
but,
that makes me nervous, but yep.
but so even though it's still the same system, there's going to be processes and things like that to relearn.
Yes,
I do think diving in and sort of getting your hands dirty helps, and really investing the time to play. So to truly just play, hey, I'm going to try creating this asset. Oh, it worked, or it didn't work. And really using that experiential learning will help people dive in. It certainly helped me.
Yeah.
When I joined Damon, Peter Schilke, the director of the Office of Instructional Design, he gave me it was probably more than a week, but I feel like it was about a week, maybe a little more, he didn't really give me any chores. He said, dive in, just play. And that was actually part of the onboarding process. Take some time and really immerse yourself in this system.
Wow.
Just if something pops up that says, are you sure you want to delete? Maybe check out with me first.
Don't hit the button too fast.
Right. Take your time. Really know what you're looking at.
Yeah, we've all done that.
Absolutely.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for spending time with us today and talking about your career path. I mean, I love the stories, and we had an extra special story on there about your traveling, because I like to hear where people have been, and especially how that is incorporated in careers, because I think some people really maybe that they get scared, or if I do that, how do I get back in, or I'm going to be so far away from my family and friends, is that going to be a good idea? But to hear people that do it and have success and have really enjoyed it and look back and think that that really was a smart move, it encourages other people to just think outside the box a little bit, because there's so many opportunities. There really is.
Absolutely. And, I have to give credit to a lot of people in my life. For me, just the open mind, think flexibly, think creatively. Your skills don't have to go to waste. I didn't want all the stuff I had learned as a teacher and as an educator to go to waste. I still want to use those skills.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to be able to find another job still related to those skills.
Right. And you certainly have a passion for teaching, and I think that, at some point, I think you need to start a Frisbee club at Damon. So I'm just putting it out there. We'll see what happens when we get the new lawn out there.
That's right. When the new lawn, we'll be the first to tear it up.
There you go. Well, thank you again for sharing your story. And thank you, everyone, for listening to SharpHR Career Corner. If you're having trouble finding out what you want to do in your career and you could use some assistance, reach out to Sharp Human Resources. We would love to help you figure it all out. If you enjoy listening to our podcast, I encourage you to download the podcast, leave a comment, and share with others you know. The more downloads, comments, and likes our podcast receives, the better ratings we will get and the easier we can be found. So thank you in advance for that. Until next time, be kind, everyone. We need to show a lot more kindness in the world, and it starts with you and I. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.